Hey everyone. Okay, so in this video I'm going to talk about what is the pelvis, and I'll talk about the anatomy of the pelvis specifically. So I'm going to start doing, I think, a bit of a foray of videos here, basically on anatomy for everyday life. So this isn't necessarily meant for someone in anatomy school, taking anatomy class, or physiotherapy school or something like that, where there's a deep, in-depth anatomy class. This is really meant, and I love teaching, I don't want to say the average person, but people who maybe know a little bit about anatomy. I want to help people understand how to apply this in their life, specifically on their health and healing journey, so that when you're going through your life and you're working, incorporating various things, various strength exercises, working on bringing balance to your life and healing in your life if you're working through chronic disease or illness, how to just understand your own body so that we can just continue to be healthy and bring in more of who we are into our life. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the pelvis. So what is the pelvis? I'm sure you've heard obviously about this term, and we feel it on our own body. So oftentimes people refer to the hips, and the hips casually, colloquially, really is this whole complex. Okay, I got bones here. Okay, but the hip, technically the hip joint, is where your leg, or the femur here, actually attaches into the pelvis. So the pelvis, or the pelvic girdle, is basically this like main complex right in the middle here. So you see these two big bones on both sides. So this is technically what would be called the pelvis. Okay, so you can see they're really fan shaped, right? And they're really right in the center of the body. And so it's the center point, the transition point between the lower body and the upper body. Okay, so when you sit, you're sitting on, people say there's sit bones, right? And the sit bones, what you feel in your butt when you're sitting, is basically this lower part right here, right in the bottom. That's one section. This whole rounded part at the bottom is one section of your hip joint, or your pelvis, I should say. Okay, so really these are two bones individually, and in the middle at the posterior part, you have your sacrum or your tailbone, right? That's what sits right between the two, okay? And then there's a joint between these two to allow motion of your two bones, like they go like this as you move, ideally. And then in the very front, the two pelvic bones combine right here. Okay, so it's a little joint. It's a soft joint. It's called the pubic symphysis. I won't use too many anatomical terms, but basically it's a joint that allows this to occur. So it's like my pinky fingers. As I twist, that's occurring. There's a little bit of motion there. And you can actually, this can be cracked and adjusted. It can be manipulated, because both of these bones can get in the wrong place. They can be rotated a bit. And as you can see, because the legs attach onto this bone, if this whole thing is rotated forward, and say, if you look from the side, say you sit always in a certain way and like the hip bones are rotated maybe a little bit like this because you're always reaching forward for the gas pedal, but your other leg is up, for example, is a common one in the car. Maybe this is forward a bit. Because the leg is attached to that, if I do this, rotate it forward, it's going to rotate this leg down a little bit. So it's going to actually make this right leg longer. So that's what's called a leg length discrepancy or difference. And that's common for a lot of people, and it can lead to back pain. So say your one leg is like this, other leg is like this. You can imagine how much strain that's going to put on your low back, because all of a sudden now you're like that, and these joints in here can get kind of out of whack, for lack of better wording. Okay, so each of these two bones, each of these two pelvic bones, are made up of three different parts. Okay, so there's this big kind of fan part here. This is called the ilia, or the ilium. That means, in Latin, that means wing. So a lot of the terms in anatomy are based on Latin, right? So these are wings, and you have your pubic part, pubic bone in the front, and then you have your ischium, which is the sit bones, these rounded kind of, that's a good view right there, rounded kind of sections. Actually, the front's maybe better. These parts. And then all three of those combine together, and they merge together, and then right in this round part where your hip attaches, that's called your acetabulum. Basically, it's just a hole. It's like an upside down. It's like inside of a golf ball. It's half open. You have your hip joint actually sits in that. So So it sits right inside there, and that's where those three bones merge. So when you're born, these three bones coming together are just cartilaginous. They're really soft. And there's almost like a little triangle inside of this circle where the three bones attach. And eventually, I forget at what age, but that actually fuses and becomes bone. And so that's a little bit of information about that. But yeah, so that's our pelvic girdle. And if you're walking, when you walk forward and back, or just forward and back, when you walk forward, basically your hips do this. Okay, so to demonstrate that, it's kind of interesting. To demonstrate that, say I was walking like this, going this way. As I do this and step forward with my right leg, you can kind of see it like that. This hip joint actually goes forward a bit, this side, and this side goes back a bit. And then as I walk forward with this leg, it does this. So you want to have that movement back and forth. And so one of the main points, other than holding the weight of our upper body in the sacrum, is you want to have good movement at this joint between your tailbone and your two hips, or your two hip joints, your pelvic bones. Obviously, this has a great function in terms of holding all of our organs, right? So you have your pelvic floor, your floor muscle. When you say those hold the P's, those Kegel exercises they say in physio sometimes, or Pilates, basically those muscles sit right in the pelvic floor, right underneath here. So they touch the end of our tailbone here, a coccyx, and then right up to the ischium here. This whole bottom is the pelvic floor. So right above that, your bladder sits right in here. You have nerves that go from our spine, these yellow guys, you can kind of see, through here, through these holes into our leg. So it's a transition point, obviously holding the weight, but also the organs. Then you have your large intestine goes up like this. I guess backwards in the video, but up your left side. And then across here and down. And then your cecum, large intestines here, appendix. And then your small intestine kind of sits right in the middle. So it's kind of right, it's a really important central point to hold all that. Emotionally, and in kind of, we'll say those circles of thought, there's also that the hips hold a lot of, it's where the root chakra sits, right at the coccyx, right at the base of the tailbone. And then kind of right in the digestive organs is your sacral plexus, which does correspond also to nerve bundles in traditional anatomy, but in Eastern circles, or in traditional Chinese medicine and in yogic tradition with the chakras and energy side of things, this also corresponds, hips and the pelvic girdle corresponds to our basic survival, our sexuality, our feeling of rootedness in the world. So a lot of times you have hip issues, there can be correlated issues with those topics as well. It's a place of a lot of imbalance for a lot of people. And then also the sacral chakra corresponds to our digestive organs as well as the root. So that's kind of a bit of the energetic side, which corresponds to this area as well. Another thing I was going to say. Oh yeah, and how to find this on yourself. So if you put your hands on the side of your body, okay, so you feel ribs. And then if you go down, you'll feel a soft spot. You might feel a little bit of end of a rib, kind of pointy. And then there won't be a whole lot of space. It's different for everybody. But then if you sink just a little lower, you'll feel kind of a bony ridge. And what you're feeling right now is this, the edge of this, okay? So this is called this is the ilium, that wing-shaped part of the pelvis, right? And this is called the iliac crest. It's just the crest, it's on the top. And there's muscles that attach in here, your pecs, be a problem. Your glutes, your butt muscles attach right on here, right? A lot of muscles attach here too, so that's also one of the functions that you have that attach on. And then if you follow that ridge to the front, just keep on following to the front, you'll get to this kind of bump on the front. Muscles attached there as well. If you put your finger on that front and then bend your leg up, bend your knee up, you'll feel some muscles kind of contract or push into your hand because some of your thigh muscles attach into that point on the front. Okay? It's hard to follow it along this part because there's a bunch of softer tissue on there. But if you take your hand, one last thing I'll show you here, put it on your belly. Feel your belly button, or your umbilicus, it's called in anatomy. And then just keep trailing down or inferior until you feel a bump or a bone. It'll be right above your genitals, okay? That's this pubic area. So the two little, you'll feel kind of a bit of it might just feel like a hard overall, but you can feel a little bit of a dip in the middle and then two kind of bumps. And those are those two bumps, the two front parts of each of the pelvic bones. Okay? So if you have, obviously with digestive issues, this is a common area, an important area to kind of know about, which is, I'm interested in talking about that topic a lot. But also if you have any kind of gynecological issues or childbirth issues or anything like that, it can come back to this joint quite a bit too. It's very connected to your pelvic floor. And obviously with any urination issues as well, reproductive issues, urination issues in particular, because the bladder sits right kind of behind that. Okay, so if you find that bone and you feel that, that's why if you feel like you have to pee and then you push just above that bone, you have to pee more, because you're putting pressure right in the bladder. Okay, so that's just some random information about the pelvis. I hope that's informative for you. Let me know if you'd like to know more about certain aspects of that. I'm interested in just helping, like I said, help us understand our bodies more so we can make informed choices and move forward in our health and our healing and however you see it, awakening, whatever, bringing more of us who we are into our bodies in a really healthy way. And so that's some information on the pelvis. Hope that's helpful. All right, have a good day, guys.